So next we'll have, are you ready? Chair Bolter. We're now USB Law and Licensing Committee.
Mike.
Okay. Chair Bolter.
So the first one is R277-550, charter schools definitions. This was a new rule, and the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-550, draft 2, on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-550, draft 2, on second and final reading. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Please
Okay.
continue.
The next one is R277-551, charter schools general provisions. This was another new rule, and the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-551, draft 3, on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-551, draft 3, on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion, Board Member Lear.
I'd like to propose a short, simple amendment to this. And I've got an amendment to this and an amendment to the next rule. The point being similar in both rules, that
Can you
The-
state the amendment? And then we'll
Yes.
speak to the,
the rationale.
Yes.
Fine. It would be on line 50, and it's draft 4, now posted.
It's on there
okay, I'm
now.
going to have Lorraine track that to be able to read.
And you want me to read it out loud, or do you want just to?
No. Yeah.
No, you do want me to read it out loud.
The amendment motion would be to approve draft 4 in lieu of draft 3.
Okay, so don't need to read just the piece of it. I wanted to propose draft 4 instead of draft 3, and then when you say so, I'll speak to that.
Okay,
Can
your motion is to,
What's the change? Except draft 4 instead of draft 3,
so you want
as
to,
posted.
yeah, your amendment to the motion
Is within draft 4, that's
yeah,
why.
is draft 4. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second, Board Member Cannon. Discussion to that motion, and you can speak to the motion.
Okay. My point here is that if there are safety concerns, and that the change would be on line 50. If there are safety concerns that have been reported to the State Charter Board, threats to health, safety, or welfare of students, that I think that information should be available to the board. As the board, it has constitutional authority for all the public school system, I would want that information to be available to the board. So my change is very simple. The State Charter Board shall share reports received, as described in right above, with the superintendent and for charter schools authorized by other authors, with the applicable authorizer. So the new authorizer would also know about those threats. But I think that the board has a constitutional authority and responsibility to know about that kind of serious information.
Okay, anyone else want to speak to the amendment? Board Member Wright?
Just on a couple things. On process, this seems material. I agree it's very small, but it's certainly material, and I believe it should be sent back to committee for further discussion and input. And the second is, charter schools are creatures of the state, but every time we impose a requirement on them that we don't impose on our districts, it causes me concern. I mean, how do we expect them to be different and innovate? Do we impose this on our districts? I guess that's an open question on it. And if not, should we? I mean, if it's prudent for charter schools, why not prudent for districts? Assume the answer is we don't impose it on our districts.
Is this statutorily required?
It is required.
So districts are required, or just charter schools, only charter schools are required in statute to provide this? Okay. Interesting.
Okay. Angie, will you come up, please?
Oh, not to us.
Take
just
the
to you
mic and then answer that question, please.
Thank
You. Chair. I'm Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent Policy. Two things. Number one, this language, without it being provided to the superintendent, is explicitly required by statute for the board to establish and rule a requirement that the state charter school board have this reporting requirement, and then that they share it with other authorizers. So that is explicitly required in statute. They didn't state it. What they said is the State Board of Education shall adopt a rule that requires the state charter school board to have a form for these reports. And then, so the one change that is new is that those reports not only would go to the state charter school board or other authorizer, but that our office would also receive those reports. So to answer your question, districts are not required to do this because the statute doesn't require the board to make a rule for districts to do it. The statute only requires the board to require us to have the state charter school board do this.
Clarification.
follow-up? Okay.
May I? So the statute, does it require that they report also to the superintendent, or is
No.
it? Okay, so that would be added above statute, a requirement above statute, okay.
Okay. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
So clarification on the statute, it's that the state charter school board shall require a form, which is different than requiring reporting, is that correct? And so the form and the reporting, because this rule doesn't address like the process that form takes place. So if you have a form, it doesn't say who that reporting will go to, it's just that they provide a form. And so it feels like those two statements don't match, so you're required to provide a form, and then all of a sudden we're talking about receive those same reports, but there's nothing in the rule that talks about how anybody would actually fill out that form or who that form would go to once it's filled out. The two ideas don't seem to match. And so I would agree with Board Member Wright that if this is something that needs to be looked at, that it go back to committee so that we can flesh out exactly the intent and how it would go.
Board Member Lear?
I could support the idea of sending it back to committee. I think it's unnecessary, especially with Angie's clarification that because this is required by statute of charter schools, the only work on the part of anyone would be the state charter board to share what it receives with the State Board of Education, who has ultimate responsibility for the public school system. So there's not a burden on individual charter schools imposed by the board of this rule. It's only the sharing from an office in this corner of the building to an office in this corner of the building, which seems very reasonable and appropriate given that the state funds for charter schools go through this office, and the board is responsible for that information. So I think having that information exchanged is not a burden on anyone, is not a complicated change, and is in statute. And so the sharing between the state charter board office and the superintendent's office is all that is under discussion, as I understand it. Is that right, Angie?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair.
I've got a couple other questions. Did you want to comment?
I just
before
wanted
get
to project the actual language so that people could look at it, which might help the conversation. Would you like me to do that?
While you're bringing that up, we'll listen to Board Member Reeby.
I like this language. I am concerned about the same things that Board Member Wright brought up. I think that we definitely need to have as much transparency when it comes to threats and any kind of safety issues whatsoever. I think maybe part of the reason why we have this for charter schools and not for our district schools is because some of our charter schools are smaller and they don't have the resources maybe to perpetuate the conversation as well as it could be. But I would like to see that this would be expanded to districts that are small, because this is important. When there's a lack of communication, when there's a safety concern, it is a safety concern for everyone. So to move from school to school and have the same safety concerns is not beneficial to any student. And I think that our paramount responsibility is to create the safest environment for our students.
let me just restate the amendment to the motion, is that the board approve R277-551 draft 4 on second and final reading. We're speaking to the proposed amendment. Board Member Wright?
I listened to what Board Member Lear said. I think I agree entirely. But this is sort of a last minute. We've gone through multiple hearings. I like the charter school community and others to give their input. And if I don't hear anything to the contrary, then I would vote in favor of it. I mean, it does make sense. But to make a material change without getting input from the community seems inconsistent with what we've tried to do in the past.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other comment, so we're going to vote on this amendment now, which is that the board approve R277-551 draft 4 on second and final reading. I guess we're speaking one more time to the motion. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
I move that we postpone this and move it back to committee as a is that a?
Because it's on
It's
an
an
amendment side,
So
we have to
send
finish
it
the
back.
amendment out.
Finish the amendment and then make that.
That is correct.
She could make an
So-
amendment to the amendment, couldn't
So
she?
we're going to vote on this. Again, we're going to vote on the amendment, which is, and I'll restate the amendment, that the board approve R277-551 draft 4 on second and final reading. We're going to vote on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did I? Oh, we have a procedure. Let me finish the vote, but before I count the vote, we'll go to that. Will the ayes raise their, all those ayes, those opposed?
No.
No, okay. Will the ayes raise their hand and be noted? Okay, that's Board Member Hanson, Gravitt, Lear, Reby, Cannon, Nielsen.
Stokes voted yes.
Who did?
And Spencer.
Spencer.
Don't forget the lost boy, Spencer.
Okay, that's 7. Will the noes be recognized?
Ellis,
Okay, we have Vice Chair Ellis, Board Member Warner, Board Member Belknap, Board Member Wright, Board Member Bolter, Board Member Lisa Cummins, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins. So the motion to amend didn't pass. I'm a no. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
Sorry, I just have a Robert's Rules question, if that's okay. So when the motion came from committee, and then Board Member Lear, correct, made a motion to substitute it. And so we were just voting on whether or not to substitute it, but when we read the motion, it was to pass the rule on second and final reading. Right. So I'm just curious about how the wording of those motions goes and how
Hers
that
was
works.
an
Well, it's an
amendment.
amendment. Yeah, the amendment was the.
To substitute draft 4.
Right.
Just embodied in draft form, and that's better.
Correct.
That section.
So if,
So it's, there is a motion now.
so the motion is
It's
still back
on
to
the table, back
3.
to 3.
Now it's back to 3.
Okay, so when we make that amendment, so when the motion's before us, the amendment would be to replace draft 3 with draft 4 on second and final reading, but we'd still have to go back to the original to get there, even if it did pass. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding is that Board Member Brittany Cummins, according to Robert's Rules, could have made another amendment to Board Member Lear's, that it just come back to committee so that we could further discuss.
Which is a motion to postpone.
Right. Okay.
Which is a kind of a, takes precedence over, but
Okay.
you have to get outside of the amendment.
Got it.
And so now,
Okay,
So
so now we're
na-
back to the original motion.
now you're back to the original motion that came out of committee that refers to draft 3. So let me just state where we're at, just so for the record where we're at. The committee moves that the board approve 2017-551, Draft 3 on second and final reading. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
I move that we postpone this rule and send it back to committee.
There's a.
Postpone
there's a-
action on this and send it back to. Motion to refer this rule back to committee.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Okay. I had some lit up, now they're off, so I'm not seeing any discussion.
The motion is,
Hold it, hang on. Angie, you have a question?
Yes, so you're not going to pass draft 3 forward, is that what the motion
okay.
is?
And I
That's
wanted
what
to
it would
ask
be.
you about the consent calendar items.
Because I would just wanted to throw, is the another option to pass draft 3 so that we meet the January 1 deadline of having something in place? And then we could do amendments to the rule like in January or February. I guess I'm just wanting to
Oh.
make sure
I
whether
like
you
that.
want to stop the whole rule, which we're required to have in place by January 1, or if you want to get draft 3 moving and then discuss this small amendment at another committee meeting. Just consider.
Okay.
Well, what we want to do and what we choose to do, and some of this time-sensitive things, it's nice to know way in advance, I think, before we get into, as we're jumping through these motions, but where you made the motion, allow you to speak. Vice Chair Brittany.
And I am perfectly fine going with that route. If we want to just
Well,
go
you
forward
can-
with the
you wanna-
motion, draft 3, pass draft 3, and then it can come forward later, is fine.
So I'm going to, I'm not going to recognize your motion that was seconded. Board Member Lear?
My concern is, I wish we'd known that before we voted the last time, because I don't want a rule like this to go forward allowing for any information to not be transferred from the state charter office to the superintendent, when the superintendent and the board have primary responsibility, constitutional, excuse me, constitutional responsibility for the state education system. So that's my concern. I wish we had known that this had to pass, that there was a time-sensitive issue, because I would have been even more insistent that we don't want a rule to stand without communication between the state charter office and the superintendent. Granted, there's some time periods that have to pass in rulemaking, and I also sometimes think things get lost in the shuffle, and we'll have a new board in January that then we'll need to have a further explanation of this. But that's a long, rambling, darn, I wish we'd had that information before us before.
Okay.
And I
That
can't
is
support
noted.
draft 3 the way it is.
Okay, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins, and then Board Member Wright.
Yeah, and I understand the concerns expressed, and I feel equally concerned with draft 4 going forward without any consideration, well, what does the superintendent do with that information? What does the state charter school board do with that information? And so in the rule, there's nothing, it's just the form is required and the information goes, but there's nothing that talks about what that means or the process in which that goes, so.
Okay. Board Member Wright.
I agree with Board Member Lear. The Utah Constitution created us. I don't think we talk enough about how that fact, we're on equal footing with our friend, the governor, and the legislature. The State Charter School Board, Utah Charter School Finance Authority are inferior to us. Sorry, they are. And we are the sovereign, and they should report to us. Arguments along those lines should be made more frequently, and I think they need to be held accountable to us. You're very persuasive, Board Member Lear, but this is the third reading, and I want input from the charter schools and others and some more thought. I don't like in the third reading, amendments really to anything. So I think I'd like to send this back to committee.
Okay, let me just tell you where we're at on this playing field. Right now, the motion is to approve R277-551, Draft 3, on second and final reading. Now, before we vote, just to know where we're at, if this passes, with everything that's happening in the discussion, this definitely can go back to committee and get cleaned up, but at least we're in compliance with a statute. Is that what I?
Chair.
Is that? Oh, okay, I can't, thank you for, I can barely hear her, so. Vice Chair Ellis?
Sorry, I'll try to yell again.
And I can't hear.
I'm just concerned that a motion was made and seconded, and then there's still some people that are in support of that motion, and it got withdrawn without taking a vote,
Yeah.
without the person that had a second having a say in it.
Yeah. That's actually, according to Robert's rules, once a motion is made and seconded, it belongs to the body. And in order to take it back, it has to be a 2/3 vote, according to the different things that I've read and trainings that I've been to. That was made by the USBA.
It's also in Robert's rules that it's not a motion until the chair states it as the motion prior to voting.
It was made and seconded.
Would you agree with, before the body? I have to restate it to take it to a vote.
I
So
would
it's-
like to do further study on that, because that seems like too much power in the hands of one, and I don't know that Robert's rules create such a system.
Well, I'm doing my best to follow Robert's rules here. I'm not trying to execute power or anything. I didn't, but I'm just trying to move this discussion forward in a fair and equitable way. So I think I
Huntsman's
might
such a power hog.
be, Lorraine's looking in the book.
Look, I'm not trying to say that. I really respect Chair Huntsman. I just don't agree
Oh,
necessarily
now
that's how Robert's
we've got all
rules are.
sorts of people coming to the table on this, so. We can certainly postpone this until later to get that answer, to see if I'm violating any of Robert's rules, but I want to make sure everybody's happy. Well, or the majority are happy with the process. So with that question, Vice Chair Ellis, I'm going to postpone this and bring this back, and we're going to get into all of our little books and thick books of Robert's rules and make sure we're following procedure, okay? So-
Thank you, and I do not think you're power hungry.
Okay, all right, well, we're just doing our best here.
But I do. Chair Huntsman, I think you're a power hog.
Okay, let's meet in the parking lot. We'll go get something to eat.
Okay,
Okay,
so,
please continue.
so we're postponing R
Yes.
277-551. Okay, so R 277-552, charter school timelines and approval process. Let me find the motion. Motion for the board. The committee moves that the board approve R 277-552, draft 3 on second and final reading. I think we might have the same problem.
Okay. All right, the motion before the board is that the board approve R 277-552, draft 3 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion, Board Member Lear.
Draft 4, I would propose as an alternative that we accept draft 4, oh great and powerful chair, and that be the draft that would be voted on for consideration
Can
Okay,
you-
we have a
instead of draft 3.
proposed amendment to replace draft 3 with draft 4. Before we dive into the discussion, is it's time sensitive? We're trying to get in compliance, but based on our previous discussion, I want to ask that question to Angie. So-
Yes.
129.
Thank
Okay.
you, Chair. And so yes, all of Rules 550, 551, 552, 553, 4, and 5, and I believe in the backup on board docs, it should state that due to HB 313, which was a bill that passed this last session, we are required to establish minimum standards, and there's a new standard that takes effect in statute on January 1, 2019. whatever you adopt today, because it would then be filed by November 15th and open for public comment in all of December, the earliest it could take effect is somewhere between January 7th and 10th. So if you postpone, and you can do that, so I just want you to understand that if we don't pass something today, we would refer it back to committee, say it's discussed in committee in December, and then passed out by the full board in January. The earliest those rules could take effect is sometime in March. So there would be a number of months where we would have old rules that were on the consent calendar, so we had 470, 481, and 482, that were being repealed because of these 500 rules. And we would have those old rules that would be subject to the standard and the statute that is only in effect until December 31. Is it fatal to not have rules available for 2 to 3 months? I mean, that's your call as policymakers. I was just trying to provide an alternative if you wanted to have something in place, and then, meaning the draft 3, that for each of 551 and 552 that the Law and Licensing Committee passed, with the option of potentially discussing these other amendments in December or January. But if the board feels more comfortable making sure that the rules are accurate before they have anything take effect, I agree, then you would postpone. Just understand the risk that then you'll have a couple of months where the rules we have are just not in compliance with the statute.
Okay. Chair Bolter?
If we pass both these rules out, can they come back in December? Like, could we then, after we pass it out, then could Board Member Cummins bring back her motion to bring back both these rules in December to look at these amendments? I mean, could we do that? We could, and then we would still have a rule in place, but we would be able to look at the amendments.
And the chairs can bring
Right.
back rules. You know, we
Yeah,
put it on the
so I would
agenda,
bring it
and
back.
it doesn't require,
Okay. I don't know if Board Member Lear would be okay with that, but just to keep with the timeline, and then we could bring it
I
back.
think, just to be clear, though, I think we'd already missed the timeline. Even if it's discussed next month, we're
Or like-
still not going to have an effective rule until mid-February.
No, about 10 days. It's January 7th to January 10th is the earliest, so it'll be about 10 days off.
And will only be 10 days late as opposed to.
Assuming there's no public hearing that
And-
then we get a request for that then postpones it. There are other things that
Right.
could push us back. But right now, if no public hearing is requested, you approve them today, we'd be about 7 to 10 days late.
okay, so let me just bring us back into this R277-552. The amendment is to use draft 4 instead of draft 3. Did we have a second?
You did, but
Okay,
can I speak to that? I've never been able to.
well, we got to get a second
Oh,
before we have a second from board
Thank
meeting. Now you can
heavens.
speak to it, Board Member Lear.
with the good faith promise of either the committee chairs or the board chair that this will come back next month as opposed to January or February, I would withdraw that motion for greater discussion, but, and that also in the interest of the board's efficiency, but I did want to just speak for 30 seconds to that. You can call it my withdrawal or my concern, and that is that, and I'm sorry I only found this, I did not see draft 3 on our materials until Tuesday, I'm sorry, and couldn't do anything about it till Wednesday, so I wasn't trying to wait till the last minute. But I think it's important to note that the purpose of these amendments are similar to the purpose of the amendment for 551, that the State Board of Education has constitutional responsibility for the public school system, and without these amendments, arguably there could be schools authorized or satellited or whatever the other word is, replicated, without an opportunity for the board to see and that might be implicit, but without a stated opportunity for the board to address any concerns that the board has. And I just cannot abide that standard. The state board has responsibility for the public school system. I've repeated that about 15 times, and I don't think but I think it's worth it repeating, because I think the way the rule was written previously, schools could be authorized, numbers of students would move from traditional schools to charter schools, which, by the way, are all public schools, and that the board would not have an opportunity to address concerns. So I really feel strongly that these must be addressed, and with your promise that that would be done, Chair of the Law and Licensing Committee and Chair of the Board, then I can withdraw that motion and I'm done.
And I
You
think
can have
I'm
lunch.
within Robert's rules, even though it was a
I'm sure you
motion
are.
and it's second, that we'll withdraw the motion. With no objections. I'm not seeing any, so that's what we'll do. So we're back to, the committee moves that the board approve R277-552, draft 3 on second and final reading. Not seeing any discussion on that, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, there's one, oh no, motion passes.
I'm a no also.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair Ellis.
That was just a courtesy vote to you, Carol, as I'm leaving.
What are you saying, Spencer?
Is there any-
I said that was just a courtesy vote to you as I'm leaving.
Oh, a pity vote. You
Uh-huh.
pity vote?
Yeah,
Courtesy.
Courtesy vote.
So
Okay, please
do we
continue.
want to go back to R277-551, or what?
Well, I respect you as the chair. If you would like to try to bring that forward, I put
Okay,
it,
we'll just
postpone it, but we
postpone
can, but if you, it's your committee, if you would like to have that, I'll
Because it
call
was
it
both
back up right
those.
now.
Yeah,
But, so what do you want done, Chair?
R277-551, draft 3 on second and final reading, with the same understanding as 552.
Okay.
That it
I
would
believe
come
I'm-
back to
I'm-
have that
I believe I'm
discussion.
within my, being the chair here, that I'm going to bring that back forward, that the motion from the committee, and the way that things were left, was that the board approve R277-551, draft 3 on second and final reading. Is that correct, Chair?
Yes.
I'm just
Okay.
wondering, should that be a motion to reconsider?
It was never
It wasn't
voted.
voted.
Chair?
No, it hasn't. We postponed to try to get some clarity on Robert's rule. The chair's bringing it up, the chair of the committee brought it forward, and I'm recognizing it as the chair of the State Board of Education. So I think we're trying to put some things to bed.
We did take a motion to postpone, and so now we're reconsidering that?
We're bringing it back up.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, we barely hear you, but if I can't hear you, somebody will pass it on. We're trying to
Okay.
get the volume up on these speakers. Vice Chair Ellis?
I'm just concerned, again, that we're getting into the habit of letting things being seconded and then just withdrawing the motion. I don't see the harm in taking a vote on the amendment because it can fail. And then we're not getting into this questionable area where we have to go search Robert's rules. There's no harm in taking a vote on Brittany's original amendment.
So, we just brought it up, so somebody can throw that original amendment back up right now.
So Brittany's motion, you said, was to postpone?
Yes.
So then if it, so it was postponed, now we're bringing it back
Now
up.
we're reconsidering that action, right?
Oh,
No, we
never-
didn't take action.
No, Brittany's motion was to send it to a committee, and it was seconded, and I'm just concerned that we're not voting on that. That's all I'm concerned about.
Did you get that?
she said that she was concerned that Brittany's original motion was to bring it back to committee, and we never, and it was seconded, and we never took a vote on that. So we could just vote on it, and so maybe what we could do is the committee moves that the board approve R277-551-3 on second and final reading, and send it back to committee for further discussion in December. Could we do that?
Well, no, well, if we're going to follow the spirit of the
Oh,
original
that's true.
motion, so what
So
we're
let's
basically
just vote
doing
on it.
is hitting rewind to where we were a while ago of having R277-551 draft 3 on second and final reading, which creates an excellent opportunity if somebody wants to send it back, or you could make that, somebody could make that motion to postpone if they want, so nobody's being railroaded or somebody's being cut out of something. And that certainly can happen.
If Vice Chair Cummins doesn't want to remake her motion, then I will, as she stated it. But I still am just concerned procedurally that we're not just, that motion didn't stand. I think it should have.
Okay, well, until we go back and, so are you making that motion? I'm just for the interest of time and making sure that
So
nobody's
it's the
being,
motion
well,
to postpone.
Well, if we're not gonna just go to her original motion, then I'll use Michelle's language. But I just want on the record that I'm concerned of this precedent that we're setting.
okay. All right, so, Board Member
Okay.
Bolter, I'd rather go back to get in the playbook of what we can and can't do and bring this back. Are you
Okay.
good with that?
Yep.
All right. Move forward.
Okay, R277-553, Charter School Oversight, Monitoring, and Appeals. The motion for the board is the committee moves that the board approve R277-553, Draft 2 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is the board approve R277-533, Draft 2 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion.
Oh, it's 553, it's typed wrong, sorry, in the,
Hold it.
in the board
Okay.
motion.
Yeah,
Hey, we're having too many of these. What is it?
553. It's right in one place, but wrong in the board motion.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right. The motion before the board is approve R277-553, Draft 2 on second and final reading. Is that correct, Chair?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Voting was unanimous. Please
Okay.
continue.
R277-554, State Charter School Board Grants and Monitoring Program. Mentoring, sorry. Motion for the board is the committee moves that the board approve R277-554, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
I'm just double checking to make sure I'm not going to state something wrong here. Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-554, Draft 1 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Please continue, Chair.
Okay. R277-555, Corrective Action Against Charter School Authorizers. And the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-555, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-555, Draft 1 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Voting is unanimous.
Okay, the other three rules were on the consent calendar. And then no action was taken on 417. It was just committee actions. R277-509 was also on the consent calendar. So the last one is R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education, board rules amendment. And the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-100, draft 3 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-100, draft 3 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion?
Yes, I have an amendment for us to postpone voting on this till December. It's on the agenda to come back to law and licensing tomorrow for further discussion on other definitions.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a motion to
Postpone.
postpone. Is there a second? Second. Discussion to that motion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting is unanimous.
And that's it.
Boy, there's nothing on that back page. I was hoping there would be a little more action for you, Chair Bolter.
No, we're done.
Well, we're not quite done.
Well.
We'll be coming back
Yeah, sure.
later in our day.